Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of all key national and international issues. And today we're going to talk about the billion-dollar club, that is the great Indian unicorn rush, those companies which have been making a lot of headlines, the startups who have got a lot of funding and have finally entered the billion-dollar club. In fact, the investors, including SoftBank, Tiger Global and Falcon Edge, are pouring money into Indian startups, churning out unicorns at a record speed and valuations. India is now home to 71 unicorns, that is startups valued at $1 billion or more. 33 of these have entered the coveted club this year itself, with 5 of them making the cut in the last 2 weeks of this month. Many of these 33 unicorns, which have cumulatively raised more than $9 billion till date, have also seen a surge in their evaluations. Now, the growth of unicorns in India has been phenomenal in the past 2 years. From 17 unicorns in 2018, the number went up to 38 in 2020, and it's now 71 and counting in 2021. Analysts say that the COVID pandemic accelerated adoption of digital services by consumers, helping the startups and new age ventures that typically build tech-focused businesses, delivering an array of offerings to customers. Many Indians who had traditionally been subscribers of brick-and-mortar businesses moved online and explored a host of services ranging from food delivery and edutech to e-grocery as well. This added significant number of consumers to startups' base and expedited their business expansion plans, also in turn attracting investors. We'll try and understand the reason behind this huge rush in terms of the increasing number of unicorns, what actually has happened behind the scenes, and also how has the government's policy helped this in terms of the interventions, and what more needs to be done also on this aspect. And for more on this, we're joined by a panel of 3 distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us in the studio Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya. He's the Editorial Director of Business Standard. He's with us. We're also joined by Mr. Rameesh Kailasam. He is the CEO of IndiaTech.org. And we also have Mr. Abhiraj Singh Bhal, co-founder and CEO of Urban Company, one of the unicorns, the 71 unicorns India has. Welcome, all of you gentlemen, to Sansad TV. Let me begin with you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Let's first start by understanding how has this happened. From 17 in 2018, the number went up to 38 in 2020. And if you look at this year, it's 71. That means 33 more added in 9.5 months. And that's somewhere around 3.3 per month.
Well, I think the seeds of a potential boom of the unicorns in this country were sown a few years ago with the kind of an initiative that the government took by laying out a policy framework which would enhance the adoption of startups in this country using technology. Now, having said that, let me tell you, and as you rightly pointed out, that the COVID, of course, expedited the sharp growth that you see in the last 2 years. The COVID meant that, you were not stepping out of home, you're working from home, so your access to the physical world is limited. So therefore, in that kind of environment, the startup ecosystem reliant on technology and delivery of goods and services through the technological online mode got a boost. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two is that the government had taken a very important step some years ago in creating a strong, unified financial payments online backbone, which has led to, in my view, the largest and the highest adoption of financial payment system in the world.
Okay.
In India, it is 85%, whereas the global average is 65%. That's the number two. That the financial adoption, fintech adoption in the country has been the highest.
Okay.
Number three is the increasing base of smartphone users in this country. Today, there are about 550 million people who are using smartphones. And if you compare that with around 640 million internet users, you can see that what is the preponderance of use of smartphones for accessing internet.
And there's a huge market there.
Huge market there. So which meant that many of these startups and the unicorns, so to say, are actually using the technology, using the smartphone as a medium.
Okay.
And finally, the big reason why the unicorns have really grown here is the digital model as a preferred model of business that is being embraced not just by the startup companies but also by the physical companies.
Indeed.
So therefore, there's a spread of the digital model of business, and that has meant that the adoption of unicorns, the technology, the explosion. And as you would know, that out of these 31 unicorns that have been born in this calendar year itself, there are 7 are fintech companies.
Indeed, and the number is 33 now.
The number is 33 now. So therefore, there are 7 unicorns which are in fintech. There are 4 others who are in e-commerce. There are 4 others actually which are into B2B e-commerce, and then SaaS is also there. So it's a range of services that unicorns offer here. But I think the 4 factors have to be kept in mind.
Okay.
There are challenges. There are infrastructure challenges in future growth, but we can come to that later.
We will definitely come to that in terms of challenges as well, infrastructure challenges, and also further in terms of policy interventions,
Absolutely.
what more can be done. Let me bring in the other 2 panelists here in the show. Mr. Kailasam, I'd like to start with you here first, since you have kept a very close watch on the startup journey in India. Being a startup is good enough, and perhaps might be a little easier as well in this era of digitalization. But the journey from the startup to becoming a unicorn, or to get that valuation, and I can see Mr. Abhiraj thinking about it. I'll come to him as well about his journey. But from your perspective, if you have to understand how do things work, startups is one part, but making that startup idea count in the market, bring investors, ensure that the consumers and customers are also satisfied with it. Not an easy task.
Absolutely. I think it's a very important question, especially when you look at the startup space today. I keep meeting a lot of startup founders, both at the early stage, mid stage, and later stage. And I think one of the important things that, as Mr. Bhattacharya also pointed out, is that you've seen a surge in entrepreneurial spirit picking up in the past few years, thanks to some of the policies that the government has brought in. But more importantly, also the fact that the youth of today is no longer looking at the fact that, okay, I would like to take a job somewhere. They are becoming what we call as work opportunity creators. I'm using that term, not jobs, but work opportunity creators, because job is inherent to any startup. That obviously you will have a startup and it will create jobs. But more importantly, as was already pointed out, your traditional economy and your modern economy and your new age consumer, who is more keen today to access goods and services with the swipe of a screen or a click of a button, that's the new age millennial consumers who are coming up, who would prefer to have everything in more digitally accessible form. And I think the startups have actually leveraged that space. But to your question, the fact is that everybody is actually thinking, okay, if I go digital, my job is done. If I create an app, it is done. It's important to note that everything is a new idea till such time that you are not constantly innovating. So the journey towards a unicorn is not carrying that one single idea, but building on it over time to reach that stage. Because, as I said, most of it is not rocket science, but most of it is fabulous smart thought. And therefore, conversion of the need and a thought is what is triggering startups today and youth to actually come up with ideas. But if I don't build upon it, the journey towards a unicorn is partly dependent on how well I innovate and how well I keep adding stuff, which is different from my market, because you will obviously have, when you create an idea, you will tell to 4 people, it might trigger 10 more people to think about it and start creating it. But the differentiator is as you build upon it and grow it and sustain it, and reach out to the market. Abhiraj has his own journey where he has built such a fabulous kind of a stack.
Indeed.
But it is a journey that he and his co-founders have undertaken to reach where it is. So I think the fundamental important thing is that.
Okay. So basically building on that idea, with unique idea, which you've thought about it, making constant endeavors as well. Abhiraj, tell us more about, let's start by hearing more about your journey, your company's journey, your ideas journey in terms of, constantly building on that idea, that making those constant efforts, and building that worth, not just about creating jobs, but building that worth wherein investors would themselves want to go ahead and pour money into your company, finally making it a unicorn.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. I think the journey of creating any company of value is a long journey. And it is a journey which starts with one step that an entrepreneur takes. But, it will typically take 10 to 15 years to create anything meaningful. In our case, when we started out, we saw a simple problem, which is that accessibility to high quality and professional services at home, be it a plumber, a beauty service, a haircut, or a cleaning service, was very difficult. As technologists, step one was, as Ramesh said, to go out there and create an app. And that's when we realized that creating an app is only the tip of the iceberg. You have to use technology, but also smart processes, and really invest in upgrading the overall ecosystem that goes behind that app.
Okay.
So today, over the last 7 years, we've created over 100 training centers, for example. We have a team of 200 full-time trainers on our payroll. And every month, we are training and retraining over 5,000 service professionals. Mm-hmm. We have invested heavily into supporting them with features like insurances, financing support, products, tools, technology, and brand. So it's really a full stack or a deeply vertically integrated approach that it takes to go out there with a solution that customers like.
Okay.
Of course, technology is at the heart of the entire endeavor, and you have to keep technology as the focus area.
Okay, Abhiraj, Mr. Bhattacharya earlier in his response also spoke about how the enabling environment was put in place quite a few years ago. You're one of those companies who had that startup idea, as you're pointing out, and then slowly built upon that. What I want to know is that how has the government's policies or various policy interventions or the enabling environment which was put in place, how has that helped in your journey? And I'm sure the way it might have contributed towards your journey, it would have contributed towards the journey of other unicorns similarly as well.
Look, I think one of the most important reasons why India is seeing the surge of unicorns, and is likely to see this over the next 5 years, is that all over the world today, everybody wants to bet on India. Mm-hmm. John Chambers recently said that if he had to pick one country to invest in Asia, he would pick India. And if he had to pick two countries, he would pick India 2 times over. Part of the reason is that we are at a very, I would say, an inflection point as a country, 75 years into our independence. Today, we have a very large economy. It's a $3 trillion economy. And if we continue to grow at a sustained 6 to 7% CAGR for the next 10 years, we will actually be a $5 to $6 trillion economy. Mm-hmm. So that's an additional $2 to $3 trillion that's going to get created. And that's a lot of rebalancing that will happen across sectors.
Okay.
Now, the government in particular has been very, very supportive of the entire startup ecosystem. And in several cases, sector by sector, it has gone ahead and created first of its kind policies, which are globally unique and innovative. And I'll give you an example from my own sector. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that gig and platform workers are in many ways the future of work. India was amongst the first countries globally to recognize gig and platform workers when the Code of Security got passed last year in the Parliament, and to provide social security benefits to gig and platform workers. And today, countries all over the world are looking at that regulation as a landmark regulation to follow. Mm-hmm. This is the case in several sectors, and the government has made its intentions very clear that we are here to support companies, we're here to support startups, we are promoting a market economy, and we want India to get to that $5 trillion economy mark as soon as possible. And that's the reason why everybody is betting on India right now.
Okay. So a lot of opportunities out there, and obviously a lot of policy interventions as well. One good, nice example given by Abhiraj out there. Mr. Bhattacharya, you earlier spoke about this enabling environment, but then this is what we are looking at right now. In terms of the road ahead, what are we planning to move on in terms of the policies, in terms of the challenges as well? Because there are going to be a lot of challenges. It's a scenario which keeps on changing. Involves technology, involves digital technology, and involves a lot of other aspects as well. Complicated scenario, but will have to be looked in a very holistic manner.
Oh, absolutely. I think both Mr. Kailasam and Mr. Singh have pointed out very important factors, and let me try to put those issues in perspective to understand what the road ahead and the challenges could be.
Okay.
In any such initiative to be a success, in my view, policy is important. Of course, I know if you don't have a strong financial payments network, then you don't have successful unicorns getting bigger, becoming decacorns. Similarly, you need the kind of policy support that Mr. Singh talked about in terms of the safety code for the labor by which the gig workers were given the social safety net facilities. Okay. Now, these are very important. But I think going beyond that, you essentially have to make sure that both the software of the digital businesses and the hardware of the digital businesses are taken care of. When I mean the hardware of the digital businesses, what I mean is that you need to have a strong broadband network in this country. Today, our broadband performance is not very, in a state where we can say that we are happy about. We are still in a fixed line network. We are 68th in the world, and in a mobile network, which 550 million mobile users use, we are in 126th. Our average speed on mobile is 17 Mbps, whereas the global speed is 56 Mbps. So therefore, I think the hardware of the unicorn space is very important to build that hardware infrastructure, and it is not necessarily only a government can do it. It has to be done. A lot of other private sector,
the industry will have to
chip in. That is the hardware part of it. The software part of it, in my view, is the skilling part that Mr. Singh referred to once again. If you do not have skilled people in this country, and we have many engineers, but how many of them are employable? So therefore, the focus has to be, again, creating educational infrastructure by which skilling and reskilling to make large number of people, and we have no shortage of people in this country. If you can educate them and skill them and make them available to provide these services, and I think that can prove to be a bonus, and at the same time, if you don't do it, it can be a handicap. So therefore, by all means, you will have more unicorns, you will have more decacorns, but unless you handle both this software part, which is skilling and reskilling, and the hardware part, which is the creating a stronger broadband network in this country, you will probably not exploit the latent potential that this sector offers you.
Okay. Mr. Kailasam, do you agree that these are the aspects which are really important when we are talking about sustaining the momentum here? We have reached a particular point. We have made our point to the world. We have shown them that, yes, India is the place to invest in. India is the place where unique ideas can prosper and can, work on the ground also. But to sustain them in the long run, these infrastructure challenges will have to be addressed, specifically when we're talking about skilling and looking at, giving that sharp edge to the digital technology part.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is there is also, I would say, an opportunity here because the startups that are coming out with new and innovative ideas, they are catering to three markets, I would say, in India. And that's the beauty. One is you have certain segments which are, we can compare it with underdeveloped. Some are with the developing and some are the developed. So typically, I mean, India has given that use case scenario for startup entrepreneurs to work on. But I think one of the important thing is if you look at all the unicorns that have got created, most of them, I would say, are riding on technology and riding on the internet as a medium to deliver goods or services. Which means that internet penetration, devices, smartphones, all of them become critical in this process. Access to it is what decides whether you are going to get a particular service or not. And therefore, it is very important that the underlying infrastructure continues to be built up. It has picked up in a phenomenal pace, but needs to continue this pace to ensure that the market penetration that is expected, the amount of size of market that is available for the startup entrepreneurs continues to be available. And of course, the more important thing is the fact that the combination of new age ideas with using underlying technology layers and the infrastructure is what is going to make this happen in a big way. And whatever we say today, I mean, the initiatives that Abhiraj did mention, the Social Security Code, all of those are steps in the right direction. The government is looking at it more practically and creating a holistic policy framework and environment. It is also important for the states and center to collaborate more, because many of these unicorns are doing businesses which are cutting across different regulations. Center might interpret it one way, state might interpret it one way, but underlying infrastructure is fundamental across states to have the same level of user experience and consumer experience to ensure that growth is available for all of them. And of course, the underlying point that wealth creation happens within India, which can only happen with a consistent policy framework.
Abhiraj, your views there as somebody who has crossed that unicorn mark or the threshold which we are talking about, but sustained growth will have to be maintained in all aspects, and that stands true for those companies who have become unicorns or datacons as well. So based on your experiences, as both Mr. Kailasam and Mr. Bhattacharya is pointing out, what is your view in terms of the challenges and the way those challenges need to be tackled from the industry's perspective, and what is it that industry expects the government to do also?
I think really I see it in three parts. I think the most important pillar is human capital. As a nation, we have to invest heavily in human capital, in skilling and upskilling, so that the future talent that is coming to the marketplace is job ready and job worthy. And this is not just related to the fields of engineering. This is also related to all fields. For example, Urban Company provides work to plumbers, carpenters, electricians, and the better the quality of these service professionals, the more consumers want to avail services from them. So human capital and human capital related investments are critical. The second for me is really technology related investments, and this was also touched upon. I think UPI was an absolute landmark infrastructure that was created. And many of us as startups have ridden on the back of the success of UPI. And I think such broad-based interoperable systems have to be created in many other areas. Financing, for example, today is a big need. Every industry needs financing. Individuals need financing. So how do we upgrade the financial infrastructure of the country? And also the physical infrastructure. Let's not forget that for unicorns to get created, the underlying economy has to be robust, and that means we have to have cities which are robust. That means that we have to have underlying infrastructure investments that need to continue. So that's really the second pillar, which is around technology and other infrastructure investments. And the third I see is a positive policy framework, a policy framework that is very forward-looking, that is thinking 10, 15, 20 years out, and really working backwards from saying, how can we be amongst the best, largest, and most prosperous technology ecosystems in the world. Today, we're at number 3, which is in a short duration of time. That's no mean feat. There are very few industries where India is number 3 in the world, and we're already number 3 when it comes to the startup and the technology ecosystem. The question really is, can we be number 2 and eventually number 1?
Indeed, we can be number 2 and number 1 as well. Thank you so much, Abhiraj, there for sharing your views, Mr. Kailasam as well as Mr. Bhattacharya for your inputs there. So there it is, all about the inside story or the story behind the scenes of this journey of Indian startups to becoming unicorns, or the great Indian unicorn rush as we are calling it. Obviously, lot of entrepreneurship skill by individuals who have come up with unique ideas and then worked on them in a sustainable manner. Also, the enabling environment which has been provided by the government, and there are a lot of challenges ahead as well, as our experts pointed out, which will have to be tackled. We'll keep a close watch on all the developments on this aspect and come back again with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.